1 minute ago, China and Russia just signed emergency military pact. NATO leaders in panic. My final prediction. Just 1 minute ago, China and Russia made a move that Western intelligence agencies have feared for years. A move that NATO strategists hoped would remain theoretical. A move that instantly triggered emergency consultations between Washington, Brussels, London, Berlin, and multiple Pacific allies simultaneously. China and Russia have reportedly signed what sources are describing as an emergency military coordination framework. Not a formal declaration of war, not a complete military alliance like NATO, not yet, but something potentially far more dangerous in the long term. A strategic alignment between the two most powerful geopolitical challengers to the Western-led global order.
And right now, as you are watching this video, military analysts, intelligence agencies, and political leaders across Europe and Asia are trying to answer one terrifying question. What happens if Russia and China begin coordinating global pressure simultaneously? I need you to stop what you are doing immediately, because what is happening right now is not another ordinary diplomatic headline. This is not another symbolic meeting between world leaders shaking hands for cameras. This is a structural shift in global power politics. A moment where the balance of international pressure may be changing permanently. And I want you to understand something very clearly before we continue. China and Russia do not trust each other fully. That is critical to understand. This is not friendship. This is not ideological love. This is strategic necessity. Two powers under increasing pressure from the same global system moving closer together because they increasingly believe they share the same adversary. And that shared pressure changes everything. I have spent 30 years studying great power competition, studying alliance formation, studying how global orders weaken and reorganize over time, studying the psychology of rising and declining powers during moments of instability. And today, I am going to give you everything. Everything about what this military coordination framework likely means, everything about why this happened now, everything about NATO's real fears tonight, everything about what China actually wants from Russia, everything about the dangerous mistake many Western analysts are making right now, everything about what this means for Taiwan, Ukraine, Europe, and the global economy, and my complete prediction, hour by hour, month by month, for where this crisis leads next. But before I continue, I need to tell you something directly. Moments like this become dangerous when people react emotionally instead of strategically. Fear creates confusion, denial creates blindness, understanding creates clarity, and clarity matters enormously during periods of geopolitical transition. That is what I am going to give you today. The deeper structure beneath the headlines. Stay with me. Every minute matters, because by the time this video ends, you will understand this global shift more clearly than almost anyone watching mainstream television coverage tonight. Do not move. This begins now. Before I go deep into today's video, I want to share something personal that I've never shared before. From 250 pounds to slim in 60 days, no gym, no diet. Here's exactly how me and my wife did it. Me and my wife were obese, blood sugar high, fat's dangerous. Family was ashamed of us. I never attended family functions. Mirror was our enemy. We tried everything. Every diet, every gym, every pill, every top surgeon in London want to look younger. China believes the West wants to prevent its rise before it becomes dominant. And most importantly, simultaneous pressure capability. This is critical because NATO's greatest strength has always been concentration. The ability to focus overwhelming power on one major crisis at a time. But if Russia pressures Europe while China pressures the Pacific simultaneously, American strategic concentration becomes much harder. That is the deeper strategic logic underneath tonight's development. Now let me explain why this happened now, because timing in geopolitics is never accidental. There are 5 major reasons this alignment accelerated at this exact moment. The first reason, Ukraine. The Ukraine war changed global geopolitics far more deeply than most people realize. Russia learned something extremely important. Western sanctions are survivable if alternative economic systems exist. Chinese trade became enormously important for Russian survival. Energy flow shifted eastward, financial systems adapted, and Moscow concluded something strategically profound. The Western-led order is powerful, but not fully unavoidable anymore. That realization changed Russian long-term thinking dramatically. The second reason, Taiwan. China is watching Ukraine extremely carefully, not emotionally, strategically, studying sanctions, studying alliance coordination, studying weapons supply chains, studying information warfare, studying economic resilience. China understands any future Taiwan crisis would likely trigger massive Western economic pressure. So Beijing is building strategic relationships now before that future arrives. Russia becomes part of that preparation. The third reason, dollar weaponization. This is one of the biggest geopolitical stories most ordinary people barely understand. The United States increasingly uses the global financial system as a strategic weapon, sanctions, banking restrictions, asset freezes, technology controls. Russia and China both now view financial independence from the Western system as a national security priority. This is why de-dollarization efforts are accelerating globally. And military alignment often follows economic alignment. Historically, this pattern repeats constantly. The fourth reason, NATO expansion and military pressure. Russia views NATO expansion as encirclement. China views Pacific military alliances similarly. Again, perception drives state behavior, and shared perception creates strategic alignment opportunities. The fifth reason, and this is the most important one, fear of future isolation. Both Russia and China increasingly believe the future global system may become divided into competing blocks, economic blocks, military blocks, technology blocks, financial blocks. And if they believe that future is coming anyway, then building coordination now becomes strategically rational. This is how great power blocks form historically, not overnight, gradually, under pressure. Now let's talk about NATO. Tonight, NATO leaders face an extremely uncomfortable reality. The alliance was designed primarily around one central threat environment, Russia, Europe, Atlantic security. But now NATO increasingly faces simultaneous pressure environments, Europe and the Pacific, becoming strategically connected. This changes everything because military resources are finite, industrial production capacity is finite, political attention is finite, public tolerance for prolonged tension is finite. And if multiple geopolitical fronts intensify simultaneously, strategic exhaustion becomes possible. That is NATO's real fear tonight. Not immediate invasion, long-term strategic overload. Now let me explain a dangerous misunderstanding many Western analysts are making right now. Many still think China and Russia can never become serious strategic partners because they historically distrust each other. This is true historically. But history shows something important repeatedly. Shared enemies create strange alliances. Very strange alliances. The United States and Stalin aligned against Hitler despite enormous ideological hostility. America and China aligned strategically against the Soviet Union during parts of the Cold War despite radically different systems. Strategic necessity often overrides historical distrust temporarily, especially under pressure. And pressure is exactly what Moscow and Beijing increasingly feel. Now let me explain Europe's real fear. Europe is economically fragile right now. Energy instability, inflation pressure, political polarization, industrial slowdown, military underinvestment for decades. And now Europe faces the possibility of prolonged geopolitical confrontation requiring sustained military expansion. That transition is psychologically difficult, very difficult. Because populations accustomed to peace and globalization struggle emotionally with long-term confrontation environments. Defense spending rises, economic sacrifice rises, fear rises, political division rises. This is how geopolitical pressure slowly transforms domestic societies internally. And Europe is only beginning that transformation now. Now let me explain America's real strategic problem. The United States remains the most powerful military force on Earth overall. But power distribution matters enormously. America must manage Europe, Middle East, Pacific, cyber warfare, space systems, global trade routes, financial stability, alliance systems, all simultaneously. This creates strategic strain over time, especially if adversaries coordinate pressure intentionally. And that is exactly why tonight matters so much. Because coordinated pressure environments are far more difficult than isolated crises. Now let us talk about global markets. Because financial systems react psychologically long before wars begin physically. Markets are already sensitive to geopolitical fragmentation, supply chain restructuring, semiconductor vulnerability, energy insecurity, shipping route disruption, currency competition. And tonight's development increases one specific fear dramatically: bloc division, a world splitting economically into rival systems. This matters enormously for ordinary people eventually. Prices, technology access, jobs, trade, inflation, energy costs. Everything becomes affected over time if globalization weakens further. This is not abstract geopolitics anymore. It becomes daily life eventually. Now let me give you my complete prediction. In the next 24 hours, Western governments publicly downplay panic, but privately intensify strategic discussions dramatically. China and Russia release carefully coordinated statements emphasizing stability and multipolar cooperation. Markets become volatile, defense stocks rise, energy markets tighten, cybersecurity alerts increase quietly. In the next 72 hours, NATO increases coordination activity. Pacific allies intensify consultations with Washington. China and Russia likely conduct symbolic military demonstrations. Joint naval exercises become highly possible. The information war intensifies globally. Each side attempts psychological messaging dominance. Within the next 30 days, one of two things happens. Either this stabilizes into another long-term Cold War-style alignment environment, or simultaneous geopolitical crises begin emerging more aggressively across multiple fronts. Taiwan pressure, European escalation, cyber warfare, economic retaliation cycles, and that second scenario becomes extremely dangerous over time, not because World War begins immediately, but because sustained simultaneous pressure increases the probability of eventual miscalculation. My overall prediction is this. China and Russia are not preparing immediate global war together. Not now. This is strategic positioning, long-term coordination, pressure balancing against the Western-led system. NATO understands this, America understands this, China understands this, Russia understands this, and all major actors still possess enormous incentives to avoid direct catastrophic conflict that matters enormously. But I want to be very clear. The world is entering a more divided geopolitical era, a more fragmented era, a more competitive era. And once great powers begin organizing psychologically into rival blocs, global stability becomes much harder to maintain over time. That is the true significance of tonight's development. I want to leave you with one final thought. Most people alive today grew up during the era of globalization, an era where the world appeared to move gradually toward integration, trade expansion, economic interdependence, relative great power stability. But history does not move in straight lines. Power systems rise, power systems weaken, new powers emerge, old systems resist decline. And periods between global orders are historically among the most dangerous periods humanity experiences, because uncertainty creates fear, fear creates competition, competition creates escalation pressure. And tonight, somewhere inside Moscow, Beijing, Washington, Brussels, and military command centers across the world, people are making decisions based on that reality. Decisions shaping the structure of the next global era already forming beneath the surface. Watch the next 30 days very carefully, because what happened 1 minute ago may someday be remembered as the moment the world fully entered a new Cold War. This is Professor Jiang. My prediction stands, and this story is only beginning.